See, even when we have fucking great processes, I inspect the loads to make sure we're not missing stuff. So here we got a cast iron sink, but I can see brass and copper just staring at me. So I can't walk by it without doing something about it. This is a great teaching moment. I can take this to the side because technically, did it stick to a magnet? Absolutely. But there's multiple metals and different components. So this is gonna be a great teaching opportunity for some of our new guys, right? It's not about fucking blaming people, pointing fingers. Yeah, my heat of the moment thought is like, what the fuck? But then the second thought is, okay, this is a teachable moment so that we keep the most metals and the best metals, best material out of the sheet iron dumpster and into the process so we can maximize our value here. There we go. Gotta have my coffee cup. Can't get anything done without coffee around here. So I just talked about it. We're just gonna do this right away because I'm here and I'm having a good time. Case in point example where we tested the magnet. Magnetically, it's going to stick because it's cast iron. Even on the outside here where we have the porcelain, it's still going to stick because it's cast iron. And it'll stick here, right? This rod, it's rusted. However, when you check the components where water runs through, like here, this is all brass, right? We're checking with the magnet, it's not going to stick to the magnet. So now what we have to do is extract this metal from this metal. And because I know this is cast iron, I can tell from doing this for a lot of years, it's a cast product. It's not simple just to extract those. Sometimes you can pull off the nuts and bolts. So we'll try to do that. Other times it's a real pain. So the first thing I do is I know the cast iron's brittle. Instead of sitting there and trying to fight things that are rusted, I'm going to use, like just putting it on the side, plastic broke off too easy. Right from here, I'm going to use technology to work. So technology here being a hammer, right? We know it's brittle, it's going to break. We know that there's 3 holes here. So I just need to extract this piece from that piece. We'll use a hammer. All right, so if this hammer doesn't work, just get a bigger hammer. All right, so if you say, hey, what's the cost benefit, whether I take the time to take it all apart or I just hit it with a hammer, I've learned over time I hit it with a hammer. From now I've extracted at least these parts and pieces. Here with this particular piece, once I get rid of the rod here, the rest of this is basically brass. So I got to disconnect that. I got to pull this pin, disconnect this, however it comes together. And then I have a piece that's enough brass where it'll go in the scrapyard and it'll pass the test. Let's take it apart. And I got to figure, all right, so that goes there. So now I can take this piece. I'm looking at it, everything looks like brass, but as always, I got to test it. Scratch it. All right, copper here, brass. So a lot of these older ones, they're brass, right? If one handle's brass, 2 handles are brass. It's pretty simple hillbilly math there. Got my shirt dirty, more brass. All right, so this is the copper, so I got to take this apart. Again, talked about in the last videos. I grew up on crescent wrenches and channel locks, so I pretty much reach for channel locks first and foremost. It's rusty, but it works. That's all there is to it from here. So it's stuck in there, a little nipple that gets stuck in there, and the nut over it. Now I'm gonna have to cut this piece on the other saw, so I pull both these nuts off. So even something like that, I'll put in a bucket and I'll cut it later. I'm not gonna go out of my way just to cut one or 2 lines. All right, so these are those copper lines. I took off that faucet. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna cut the copper nice and simple so I can pull off this brass. This brass piece here, definitely need to get it off. This brass piece here goes in with the copper. No scrapyard's gonna get upset with you about that. They're pretty close in price, and again, weight-wise, it's still pretty good weight. I won't get knocked for it, but the bigger one I definitely need to take off. So I'm gonna cut, definitely take off the bigger nut. Maybe we'll get the second one off too. So when you cut a soft metal like copper, it flakes out like that. So the big nut came off real easy. So that one we take off, one with the brass. This other one, we'll see, 50-50 it comes out. Oh yeah, she doesn't want to come out. So I'll give it a second. Yeah, I bent it a little bit here. That happens. All right, so if I throw that in with my copper, I'm not gonna get dinged for it. Could throw it in with copper 2 was really the best thing for it. So this is copper 2 because it's painted, has some imperfections, so I'm gonna throw that in with my copper 2. No scrapyard's gonna ding you for the copper 2. Talked about it earlier. If I'm gonna come over to the table here like this, I'm gonna take my time to make a couple cuts. So I already had this laying here ready to go. This here, steel pipe, brass fitting. It had a what do you call it? Knob on it here. I just hit it off with a hammer because I can, right? So this is brass. screw here is going to be a pain in the ass because it's already bent because I hit the thing with a hammer. Hammers and screws don't get along well. They just don't. Of course, now I'm using like a big ass fucking channel lock. So it's totally, totally not the right tool for it. Again, I don't fucking prep these videos that much. Oh, you piece of shit. Now it's the principle of the matter. Probably not gonna get dinged for one screw, but I'm gonna shoot videos and tell you how to do it. Might as well do it right. All right, so that's out. That's brass, that's brass, that's brass, that's brass. That's not brass. So now we're gonna cut this. Whenever you're cutting, if you see sparks, that means you're cutting into steel. I'm sure there's some super high-speed science behind that. I don't know what it is, but when people are like, why does one thing spark or the other? Because steel, that's why. It's hard, it's got iron, that's why. Generally speaking, when you're cutting things, I always want to put the more meat on the table, right? That way, when something does fall, that little bit of thing that falls. So sometimes it's whatever, right? It doesn't matter what you're cutting, whether it's the brass or the steel. I always want to put the most meat as possible in here so it's as safe as possible. I got this saw back in 2009 or in 2008 for Christmas. $200 investment. Made tens of thousands of dollars because of this saw. Something like this. Now I still have that threaded pipe inside this piece of brass. Scrapyard will not ding me for that. Still, the majority of the weight here is going to be the brass. Stuff like that gets washed out in time over, you know, thousands and thousands of pounds of brass that makes it weigh all the way from the collector, me, to the recycler, to the processor, to the smelter. That brass will work itself out. So now I extracted the piece that's all brass. So this is where the money's at, right? Because I put that effort into it. I'm what, 3-4 minutes into this project. It's 4 pounds, $2 a pound. It's $8 right here. Like that's where I made my money on this project. But I already started, so I'm going to finish the project. Again, if I send this to the scrapyard, it'll all get recycled. It's just that the next person down the line is going to get the money instead of me. And if I have the tools and the resource and the ability to do it, I'm going to want to do it. Oh! Yeah, that fucker was on there. So whenever you're doing stuff like this, again, take things apart in a logical manner. Do it 10 times until you realize what works for you, and then come up with your own method. Again, I know what works for me, whether I'm going to break stuff or I'm going to take it apart. So right here, I'm going to take this apart, which will allow me to push this down a little bit, and then take off the other side. Right now it's in here, now it's loose. When in doubt, everything's a hammer. This might be already too far gone. So this is the grommet in here is breaking apart as I grab it. So I can't twist it. Now what I do is separate this piece from this piece. So you can tell with our videos that I don't prep shit, I just grab shit and I just start banging it out, and that's how life works, right? So like, again, some people out there in this world will do everything super prepped ahead of time. I don't, so that means, you know, you gotta watch me for a couple minutes here, tell stupid jokes. At least it's also very humbling for me and other people out there that are doing scrap. It's like, oh, yeah, it didn't go the way I wanted it to. It's like, yeah, well, that's fucking life, man. You know, shit happens, and scrapping is a great analogy for life. It's like, it doesn't always go the way you want it to. There we go. This is a classic example of I went the wrong direction. So I should take apart the first thing first. So I should have taken this off first, see? But I didn't, because I went to what I thought was the next best spot, and it wasn't. That's a classic example of do things in fucking order, right? Like, obviously the plumber put it together that way, so take it apart that way. So I'm holding on this inside. My original goal was to take out this side first, but that didn't fucking work out because that's how life is sometimes, right? In life, when you make a decision, one of two things is gonna happen. Either it's gonna work the way you anticipated, or you're gonna learn new fucking information. That's it. I don't believe in fucking failure. I believe in, we do things. I don't believe in trying. There's no such thing as fucking trying. You did or you didn't. Don't give yourself fucking credit when you didn't do it. Give yourself credit when you did do it, and either it worked out or it didn't. Like, I tried to be a professional volleyball player. Not really, but, right? It didn't fucking work out. I went to the fucking beach a lot. This grommet breaks apart. So that's not supposed to do that, but that's years and years. Okay, now, hey, I extracted the thing I wanted to extract. So you can tell, right here, I was trying to grab onto it. I talk about with brass, for example. So that rust is all surface rust as I'm looking at this all one piece. But I can see here, you can really, really look. It's brass there, right? Steel wouldn't have made sense for this because it's in contact with water constantly. But when you scratch it, you start to get brass flakes. So even though it's got rust on it, the rust was from other metals that were interacting over time, or it could have been rust from the damn water. So this piece here, take a file to it. And it's that beautiful, beautiful sweet brass. This piece here, again, this is the only piece that's steel. This might be, it's not steel. So not steel is always the key. My daughter scraps with me from time to time. She always gets excited when stuff sticks to the magnet. And she's 8. I'm still explaining to her that we don't want things to stick to the magnet. Brass, pin, I don't care about, all brass. Beautiful. Now, this cast iron sink, I don't know, I got what, 7-8 minutes into it, right? 7 minutes into it, I got 5 pounds of brass at $2.20 a pound. I got a couple pieces of copper that I got to cut yet. So when we talk about how to scrap, I say the goal is to scrap at $100 an hour. When you take apart stuff, it slows you down, but it's still the right thing to do, unless you want to give that money away. That's it, right? So I will do it. Faucets, things like that, 3 to 5 pounds, less than 10 minutes. I still look at that as a W. I'm 10 bucks. I'm 10 minutes into it, right? So I'm scrapping theoretically. If it takes me 10 bucks or 10 minutes to make 10 bucks, right? Do the hillbilly math. I'm scrapping 60 bucks an hour. And that's scrapping a cast iron sink. Impromptu video.